Welcome to Songwriters Perspective. I'm your host, singer-songwriter John Michael Ferrari. On today's show, Pepper J will be speaking with music producer Bob Bender, who has spent over 45 years in the music industry and has produced over 300 tours, festivals, concerts for some of the most famous artists in the music business, and will give us some of the most invaluable information for the up-and-coming independent singer-songwriter. I promise you, you will find this interview extremely informative. And we'll also be listening to R&B singer-songwriter Marc-Alan Barnette with his song, She Still Does It For Me.
Baby, you're one heck of a girl, heck of a girl. Baby, you're the one.
Well, here it is, one of my new songs off my new CD, I Keep Dreaming album, inspired by an afternoon shopping at Trader Joe's here in Las Vegas, when I witnessed a beautiful young lady picking out tomatoes in the produce section. With a quick glance and a beautiful smile in my direction, I thought to myself, yes, she's one heck of a girl. And here is my new song entitled, One Heck of a Girl.
Take you to a movie. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna show you my room view. Cafe terrace, table for two. Cause you're one heck of a girl, heck of a girl. Ooh, baby, you're one heck of a girl, heck of a girl. Baby, you're the one. Friends say you got a high IQ, razor sharp, but you play it cool. Ain't it tizzy how we get along? Beautiful, that's why you're in my song. Cause you're one heck of a girl, heck of a girl. Ooh, baby, you're one heck of a girl, heck of a girl. Baby, you're the one. Would you like to play a rodeo? Saddle up, baby, here we go. Play ball in the tall green grass, throwing crazy, add a little jazz. Cause you're one heck of a girl, heck of a girl. Ooh, baby, you're one heck of a girl, heck of a girl. Baby, you're one heck of a girl, heck of a girl. Baby, you're the one, one heck of a girl.
All right, music fans, let's get ready with Pepper J's conversation with music producer Bob Bender.
We have a very special guest today with over 50 years experience in the music entertainment industry. He has produced over 300 tours, festivals, and concerts throughout the United States, Canada, Europe, Mexico, and Japan. Bob Bender, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm actually honored. Thank you very much.
Songwriters in Nashville, they have goals, they have dreams, and they have dreams of being on tours and concerts, things that you have been involved with hugely famous people. They seem very unprepared. Any suggestions for you on how they would prepare themselves for the next step?
I think the singer-songwriter really needs to determine who they are, first and foremost. not necessarily what they are, because that's a simple analogy. Well, I'm a singer and I'm a songwriter. But who you are, who you want to be. Do you want to be that person that's on stage performing, on tour, getting in front of hundreds, if not thousands or tens of thousands of people? It's a very difficult road to be on. It always has been in all the decades I've been in the business. I think the singer-songwriter, first of all, when I say they need to determine who they are, we already have a Taylor Swift. We already have a Garth Brooks. We already have those superstars. You need to be yourself, and you need to be able to find your niche, how great or how small it is. That, to me, is really the basic component getting started in the business. And understand that it's not an overnight success. And I think we have that fallacy these days with these reality music shows, American Idol and The Voice and America's Got Talent, et cetera, et cetera. Viewers see that as, oh, they went in and auditioned and they got on the show and they make it into the top 20 or the top 5 or they win. Bada bing, bada boom, success. And it's not that way. It is years and years and years of getting there. The cattle calls, the tens of thousands of people that audition for these shows that we never see. The 8 to 10 to 12 weeks of actually being on the show. There's so much pre-production work, so much prep work before that. And so I think we have a tendency to have misguided souls when they want to be in the music business as a singer or as a songwriter or as both. I think one of the other things we have to look at these days is, what is success? What do you determine as being successful? And if you're a happy camper performing in front of 50 people or 100 people in a club, keep doing it. You're more than likely not going to get discovered by someone. Record labels just don't do that anymore. That whole artist development thing went out the window years ago. And now record companies and management and booking agents, they look at data, they look at analytics. How many followers do you have? How many listeners do you have? What type of likes are you accumulating? And that is really what's driving that machine today. So I think once that singer-songwriter starts figuring out those components, I think that reality check actually gives them a better shot of maybe becoming successful. And once again, what is the success? Getting in front of 10,000 people in an arena, it's a great thing. It absolutely is. But it's really about 2% of the whole music world that gets to that level, that aspires to that. So you have to think about starting small and working your way up the rope.
Speaking about that 2%, the top echelon, you have worked in the capacity of a tour manager with some of the biggest, Ringo Starr, Billy Preston. Oh, my goodness. If a singer-songwriter would like to go on tour, any advice you can give them?
Session work is some of the most important things that they can do. I interviewed Buddy Jewell, who's a country artist, who was actually on the Nashville Star, one of the very first music reality shows, and he won season 1. And he started out being a session singer in the recording studio. And depending on who you ask, he did between 4,000 to 5,000 demos that he recorded. That still didn't get him anywhere. He was singing hits for George Strait and all types of different artists, but it wasn't getting him anywhere. It wasn't until he actually auditioned. But that groundwork that he laid, somebody in the studio one day said, "Hey, buddy, you really need to audition for this show." And he almost didn't do it. He said that he was on his way to the audition and he called his wife and he said, "I don't think I'm going to do this. I don't think this is a good fit for me." And his wife said, "We moved from Texas to Nashville so you could seek out the record deal. This is what you've always wanted." You do what you need to do, but I think you need to go audition for that show. And he did, and he won, and it led on to a multi-platinum career for him in front of tens of thousands of people. But let's look back. He started in the studio. He started as the session player. I think the other thing that songwriters need to do is hone their skills. I talk to songwriters all the time. This is Nashville. It's Music City. It's songwriting capital of the world, it seems like. Do you co-write? Well, I haven't really gotten into that. Well, why not? Well, I don't know if I want to share my music. Well, you're not going to grow as a singer or a songwriter if you don't at least share your music. You know, we have guitar polls. We have singer-songwriter nights in the round. Those, I think, are so important, even if there's 15, 20 people in the audience, because you don't know at what moment a song might inspire someone else who may come up to you and go, hey, I want to be a co-writer with you. I've got these great ideas. Let's get in a room and write together. I think a lot of great things can come out of that. And I think age is not an issue either. If you're 18 years old or you're 68 years old, if you have great ideas and you have the imagination, the creativity, I think that's really something that, once again, you need to aspire to get out there and get in front of other people. And I think songwriters are some of the most introverted people I've ever met in my life. They really are. And that can be a plus and that can be a minus. And I think that sometimes you have to get over that anxiety, get over that. You have to become really fearless pretty quickly, understanding that your ego will be kept in check by so many other people. But I think that the fearlessness needs to set in and not be afraid of failure. A friend of mine who has written 20, if not more, top 10 songs in pop, in Christian, in country, told me a while back he's had more failures than he's had success. But those failures helped him to understand the direction he needed to go. So I think songwriter nights, guitar polls, working with other songwriters helps. And as I said, that whole getting in the studio and being a session singer, you never know when someone's going to say, hey, I'm going out on the road. Can you go with me? We have a thing here in Nashville called Lower Broadway. It's honky tonk row. You know, there's probably 15, 20 honky tonks that aspiring musicians and singer-songwriters go and they play every night. Some of these people play 6, 7, 8 hours a day, and they're not playing their own tunes. They're playing cover tunes. They're playing the best of Willie or Miranda Lambert or whatever it is. But they're getting the experience of working with other musicians. And I've heard stories of someone saying, hey, I'm going on the road. Can you take my place at this honky-tonk for a week or two? And they go in and they do it. And then that person comes back and thank you very much. Appreciate you doing that. And inevitably, they'll say, hey, we have an open slot on the tour. Would you be interested in going with us? So that's really the next thing. And this is, to me, is so far more important than anything else, and that's relationships. And I think singer-songwriters, especially today, they forget that element that is so important, and that is meeting someone, exchanging phone numbers and email addresses. I'm old school. I still hand out business cards. And I think that is a way to stay in touch and communicate, but I believe that you need to build relationships. And it doesn't need to be, hey, what can you do for me? Right. It needs to be, what can I do for you? Exactly. And I think that in the end pays off. You mentioned all these gigs I got being on the road as a tour manager. And I can guarantee you not one of them came from me holding my hand out and saying, help me. It was working in the trenches and producing, hundreds of shows and getting to know people and how can I help you? And one day you get that phone call. Hey, what are you doing? Oh, I'm sitting at home. Great. How'd you like to go out on the road? Sure. When? Oh, you're leaving tonight. I have a ticket for you at the airport. And that's how more of my tours came about than not. And it's because of those relationships.
You've worn so many hats in this industry, and one of the ones that interests me is manager of artist development. I mean, like for Curb Records, for people that are at the top. Tim McGraw, Leanne Rimes, oh my goodness, Hank Williams Jr.
Oh, yeah.
So what can singer-songwriters now that are trying to go on the road, how would they develop themselves? Because they don't have a manager of artist development with a record deal.
Yeah, that's all gone. Really within the last probably 15, 20 years or so. We've seen that capacity in record companies. It just faded away. Once again, we're talking about social media. Social media now is the driving force. That's what everybody looks at. They look at the numbers. And I think one of the things, I hear a lot about, well, Spotify, I don't make any money on Spotify. They're paying 0.0008 cents. You can't look at Spotify or Pandora or any of those others as a revenue stream. They're just not. You have to look at them as promotional tools. That's what you really have to engage in, that this is something that I can use to help promote me. Getting those analytics, getting that out there, and getting back to what we talked about, the guitar polls and the songwriting and the singer-songwriter nights, honing that craft and honing that skill. That you have to get your face out there so often. I've had friends that have moved to Nashville, and after 6 months, they go back home. You haven't given yourself enough time. Do you know what it takes to make it in this town? We call it a 5-year rule. And if you're not willing to invest 2 to 3 to 5 years of your life in your career, then you're not real serious about it. Because remember what I said earlier, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not instant gratification. You have to be willing to spend the time to build those numbers. A lot of these TikTok stars these days, they'll accumulate a couple million likes. But what does that actually translate into? And I've talked to people in the business that have said, yeah, we've taken on a TikTok star that had, 2 million likes, and it didn't translate into anything because there was no live performance. What they were doing was in front of a camera. I'm going to set this up. I'm going to do my little song and dance routine, and at the end of the day, I'm done. But you don't know how it is to interact with an audience. What if you got a heckler? What if you got someone that comes up to you and goes, you broke my heart. That song just, it meant everything to me. Those types of situations, those types of instances, that's your learning path. That's your university of hard knocks, so to speak, that you need to stay on. And it's not going to happen overnight. And once again, I don't care if it's Nashville or it's Los Angeles or it's London or it's Austin or New York. You can't go anywhere and expect to find success overnight. It's a long road. And that's something that we have to keep in mind constantly.
A music producer is so important, and I think a lot of people really don't know what that means. It can mean so many different things. But you've produced many album projects. Any suggestions for singer-songwriters on how to work with their music producer?
I think the singer-songwriter and the producer need to get to know each other intimately. Not in a physical sense, but in an emotional sense, in an intellectual sense. What makes them tick? What's their brand? That is something we so overlook these days. Artist development from a record label perspective, we used to work on the brand. Okay, you're a singer-songwriter. What would you do if you couldn't be a singer-songwriter? My first response would be I want to be a singer-songwriter. That's all that matters to me. Okay, but let's dig a little deeper. What else interests you? Well, I like to ride horses. I love doing woodworking. I knit. I'm a self-proclaimed chef, something like that. And that's where that relationship with the producer comes in handy, because now the producer has more than a one-dimensional person to work with. Okay, great. You're an amazing singer-songwriter, but why are you writing these songs? What are they about? I may have a song that you didn't write, but as a producer, I may want you to take a look at. you have to be open to those perspectives that, that what I said earlier about Buddy Jewell, who recorded 4,000 to 5,000 demos. He sang for George Strait, he sang for Clay Walker, he sang for Leanne Womack. And I asked him, when you sang those songs, did you know they were hits? And he says, no, I was just in the studio singing a song. Turned out to be a hit for each of those artists, major, major hits. So the producer and the artist, let's not call it a singer-songwriter for a minute. Let's just call it the artist in the studio. They need to be able to get along on so many levels beyond just, well, we're going to go in the studio and record a song. The producer is there to produce. He's the conductor of the train. The artist, the singer-songwriter, they need to be able to understand that they have to listen to what the producer's saying, trust, or what the engineer is saying. A lot of times the engineer will go, hey, let's try this. And the producer will go, great idea. And the artist, the singer-songwriter will go, are you sure? I don't know about that. But that is trust. It really is. And it's that relationship. And I would never, as a singer-songwriter, I would never settle on the first producer that came along. I would interview several different, have lunch with them, have coffee with them, whatever it is. Find out what makes the producer tick. Because sometimes a producer will take you down a road that not only maybe you're not comfortable on being, but maybe you shouldn't be down that road. Because you don't want to lose, once again, who you are. And I think that the producer a lot of times will have the best interests, they think, but is it really? And so it's a learning curve. It's a learning period that you get to know each other. And I think that's so important. I did an album years ago for an Americana artist. And we recorded in Nashville, and it was okay. But the magic wasn't there. Well, he was from upstate New York. So then we went up to upstate New York and recorded in this little studio out in the middle of nowhere. But it had a really cool vibe. But this time we used his band instead of session players. And it was magic because now we had the band that knew what the singer was. They knew what his music was about. So then we moved the whole operation back to Nashville into a bona fide, legitimate, Class A studio and created an album that got nominated for a Grammy. Those are the types of things that don't happen a lot, and it takes money. But once you figure out those dynamics, then you've got that magical moment.
You do so many things to assist and support the singers, songwriters, the entertainers, the people that want to make it in the entertainment industry. And one of those many things is your podcast that I understand was ranked top 7th in the entire world, the business side of music. Wow, congratulations on that. And thank you so much for, what you're doing, because you have top-rated people, but you have also people that seem like they're on their way up, giving them an opportunity.
I have always been a proponent, and thank you, by the way. It's been 7 years of hard work to get there. And we were thrilled when Spotify informed us that we were one of the top 7 music industry interview podcasts. I'm a big proponent of the independent artist, and I think you can classify the singer-songwriter in there. I have a label background. I worked for 3 different record labels in my life, and I loved it. It was a lot of fun. It was great. I got to work with some amazing artists. You mentioned Tim McGraw and Leanne Rimes and Jody Messina and Hank Williams Jr. and so many others. But I've always been for the underdog. I've always been for the independent artist. And the good news these days, and we haven't really talked about this, is the good news is because of social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, it's becoming a level playing field now. You don't necessarily need the record label anymore to be successful. Once again, what is success? That's something that you have to set. But I think that the independent artist needs every opportunity that they can get. And so that's one of the things we've tried to do on the podcast is, we'll get big names on the show, and I'm thrilled and I'm honored to have them on. But if there's an independent artist, and I probably get 10 to 15 emails a week from independent artists. I listen to your show. I want to be on your show.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, send me your music. Some of it I like. Some of it I'm thinking, you got a ways to go. You know, it's either in the quantity or the quality. But every once in a while, someone will inspire me. And I love being inspired. And that's when I make the phone call and go, I want you in the studio. We're going to do a podcast on you, because we have 300,000 listeners around the world. If I can get that artist and that music, and I will tell you this, a lot of times we don't play their music because it's so easy to find. Go to Spotify, go to Pandora, you'll find their music. I want the listener to know who the artist is, what makes them tick, how did they get started? And I'll ask a lot of the same questions for everybody that's on the show. How'd you get in the business? What was your musical inspiration? Who inspired you? Was it a family member? Was it watching the Beatles on Ed Sullivan in, the 1960s? What was it? And that, to me, is a musical journey that I think so many listeners, so many independent artists, so many singer-songwriters can go, that's me. They're talking, that's exactly what I'm doing. Yeah. And I think that helps inspire and helps motivate. And, I've got a dear, dear friend who's in his early 70s, Doug Robertson, who you met, who is still plugging along as a singer-songwriter.
Yes, he is. Yes, delightful.
Yeah, and I've had him on the show twice because he's got these wonderful, engaging
ditties.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And stories and, how did you write this one song? And I used to live on the train track, next to the train tracks, and I wrote the song Portola. And that intrigued me enough to go back and listen to the song several times. And I think the story is the most important thing with the independent artists. So that's why they come on the show.
You mentioned that it can be very expensive to gain fame and recognition in the music business. If an independent artist had a savings of $50,000, $100,000, maybe even $150,000, would it be worth it to them, to their career, to put that into like billboard ads or Miss Rolling Stone, depending on their genre stuff, to try to get them some recognition? What do you think?
That's such a great question. So many artists that I speak to, so many artists that I speak with, I should say, they want to get on the Billboard charts. They want to get on either the monitor chart or the active chart. And it's not going to happen. It's just because, at least not now, the record labels still control that dynamic. They still, to a certain extent, are the gatekeepers there, or at least the key masters. I would take that money. First of all, I don't think you need a big budget to go in the studio anymore. So much can be done on a laptop these days that sounds really good. But I think if you want to spend the money to go into a studio, put a budget together. Talk to that producer, unless you're self-producing. And I don't always recommend that. Find a good producer. Check out their track history. Check out their record. Figure out what it's going to take to record a song, and then multiply that by the number of songs you want to record. And I don't think you necessarily need to go in the studio anymore, especially as a young artist, a singer-songwriter just starting out. I don't think you need to record 10, 12, 14 songs. I think you can do it with 4 or 5. Take that budget and increase it by about 20%. So last time I was in the studio was a couple of years ago. We did 5 songs, and it worked out to be about $3,000 each, including the session players in the studio and the producer fee. And we got a great sound. I think that's the biggest factor is, can you get a great sound? Is that magic that we talked about earlier. I would take, if you're going to spend some money, hire yourself a branding company, a company that specializes in music branding. Hiring that branding company will help your career more than anything. Now, they're not free. They're not necessarily cheap. You might wind up spending as much money on the branding marketing company. We can call it a marketing company. You might wind up spending as much money on that as you would in the studio.
Or more.
But I wouldn't necessarily spend that money on radio promotions per se, because radio's in trouble right now, and we haven't talked about that. But terrestrial radio, they're feeling the effects of streaming. They are truly feeling the effects. They won't admit it yet, but the writing is on the wall. And radio is losing its listeners because I get in my car, I'm 66 years old. I put on Spotify and I listen to what I want to listen to. No commercials, no DJ, in the background. I would look to a good branding company, and I've worked with a few, that can really set the course for you to get the response that you want to get for your music, and might, in fact, at some point help you get that great gig in the sky, performing in venues, either as a backup singer or a sideman, guitarist or a keyboardist, or maybe you're the opening act. When I was on Ringo's tour in 1989, we had an artist that absolutely nobody had heard of by the name of Mason Ruffner. But he was wonderful, and he went out and performed for 30 minutes. Honestly, don't know what it did to his career, but what a nice feather to have in your hat,
right,
to say that you opened for Ringo on his All-Star tour. And it was just great music. Well, how did that happen? Somebody said to somebody, you need to check out Mason Ruffner. I think he's worthy of it. So that's where I think a branding company can help. So I would create a realistic budget for the studio and ask around. Don't be afraid to talk to other people. Don't take the highest number and don't take the lowest number. Do your homework. And then talk to some good branding companies and find out what they're going to charge to help monetize you.
Right.
And I think that's where the return on investment comes from. When you can start, we're really not selling CDs anymore, although I think it's a good merch item. I think T-shirts and posters and CDs are must-haves on
the
your
gigs
on your tables. I think must-have. And some artists are printing vinyl.
Yes.
I think it's an expensive piece of merchandise to sell, and not everybody's going to buy it. It's going to take the audiophile who wants the sound and the feel of vinyl. Yep.
Going to compress it, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, that in itself is one way to return, get a return on your investment. But I think it's that 5-year plan you got to have that, and I've had a lot of people in this town who have launched their careers with 401k money. Mom and dad will, take money out of retirement or the 401k. And I don't necessarily think that's a smart move either.
Or a loan on the house.
Yeah, I don't think that's a smart move because I don't think the return on investment for what's going to be a high 5 to low 6 figures, $50 to $75 to $100,000. I just don't think you're going to see it. I don't think that's realistic. But a singer-songwriter, an artist, can make money doing what they're doing and have a nice little career by making $35,000 to $50,000 a year. They can do it. Maybe it's house parties, couch concerts, we call them. It's maybe playing coffee houses 5 nights a week, and selling merchandise. That's Live Nation has done something recently that I'm thrilled about, and that is they've waived the merch fees for small acts now. So when they play a Live Nation venue, whether it's a club or a theater, they're not charging them a percentage, which is a smart move because honestly, at the end of the day, that's the bread and butter of those artists. That's what's paying for the van. That's what's paying for the crew. That's
the gas.
Yeah, that's what's paying for them to be out on the road.
When you say a branding company, you're talking about public relations firm?
Beyond that, beyond public relations, I think you have to get beyond public relations. I think articles in digital, physical print are nice, but it's not long lasting because there's so much. We're inundated with 500 channels of television now, and these things we call smartphones, which I don't know if they're that smart or not. Those are distractions. No, I think it needs to be someone who can brand you. So what do I mean by that? Oh, you like horseback riding? Well, let's see about maybe getting you connected with a tack company, saddles. Oh, you like whiskey? Let's see if we can find a boutique distillery that we can attach your name to. You love to cook? Let's see if maybe there's a chef knife company or, a company that makes bowls and pots and pans that we can connect you to. Maybe you wind up being a guest on a cooking show, or maybe you wind up being a guest on on a show that explores Airbnbs. That's branding. That's how, people like Trisha Yearwood are so smart these days because now they have their own cooking shows.
Yes.
And it's gone
several
beyond,
of them.
Yeah, and several artists are doing it, and it gets beyond the music. My wife and I watch these remodeling shows, renovation homes, where people come in and quite a few of them are actually shot here in Nashville. And it's singers-songwriters, aspiring artists who figured out a way to get on television without having to play a note of music. That's branding.
Yes.
And that's the end result.
So off the record, if you were going to recommend a branding company, which branding companies would you think we should look at?
Probably the best one that I like right now is a company called Dead Horse Branding.
Dead Horse Branding.
They're out of Nashville, and they're out of Australia. And it's run by a husband and wife team, Rick Caballo and his wife, Melissa Cora Caballo. And they're just sharp. Oh, my gosh, they're good at what they do.
So, but you have to have a good product for them to...
You really do, and they'll tell you. They'll tell you whether you have a good product or not. So, yeah, but once again, they're the ones that will peel back that layer of the onion, all those different layers, and find out who you are and what it's really all about. And I think that's what's so important. That company, or whatever branding company it is, that gets to know you. Now, I want to preface this whole thing with what we just said. I'm finding a lot more publicists, a lot more public relation companies that are starting to get into branding now.
How will people learn more about business side of music? Where can they go to find information?
It's real simple. You just go to www.businesssideofmusic.com. Our website's there. All of our podcast episodes are there. Or you can go to YouTube, and we have webcast episodes where the guest is in the studio. We shoot video on them and kind of get a little behind-the-scenes look of what the studio looks like and how we interact with each other. And hopefully at some point within the next year or so, Lord willing, we're going to start streaming live. And I think that just provides another outlet. But go to the website, check it out. And we're on absolutely every single podcast platform that there is. So Business Side of Music.
Bob Bender, it has been an absolute honor having you on Songwriters Perspective. Spend the time with us, and I could listen to you for hours, frankly.
Well, thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it. And your crew.
Oh, great. I'm Pepper J. with Songwriters Perspective. Back to you, John Michael.
Thank you, Bob Bender, for that wonderful, insightful interview. Let's take a listen to R&B singer-songwriter Marc-Alan Barnette with his song, She Still Does It For Me.
It's that look that she has when the sun's coming up, I adore. No matter how many times I've seen it before, just like that this time we met, we were only 16. Time might pass by, but she still does it for me. She worries that years have taken something from her, but like fine wine, she just keeps giving.
That's Marc-Alan Barnette, She Still Does It For Me. So picture this. It's one of those nights at the club. The music's blasting, the dance floor's packed, and there's this beautiful young girl trying to enjoy the music. But every time she turns around, there's another guy trying to strike up a conversation. I could tell she was trying to be polite. So during my break, I decided to step in. I went over to her and said, "Hey, if anyone bothers you, just tell them that you're my girl and you've got somebody to take you home." She flashed me a smile and said, "Okay." And that's how this song came about. I wanted to capture that Motown vibe, you know, that James Jamerson killer bass lines and those smooth backup harmonies. That's the feel I was going for with this track. I hope you enjoy it. Here's Please Tell Them.
1, 2, 3, 4. Please tell them, please tell them, please tell them, please. Please tell them that you're my girl. Just tell them that you're my girl. And you've got somebody to take you home. Somebody, somebody. May I ask you, lovely darling, can I reach out and touch your hand? You make it easy for me to fall right where I stand. I never had this kind of luck before. Call me a lucky guy. Baby, we could make a lovely child. You'd make a lovely bride, bride. Please tell them that you're my girl. Just tell them that you're my girl. And you got somebody to take you home. Somebody to take you home. Somebody, somebody. You brighten up my day without even trying. You are the light, my babe, where the light is dying. I beg your pardon, I'm at your command if you want me to. Now we found each other, babe. Now it's all up to you. Please tell them that you're my girl. Just tell them that you're my girl. And you got somebody to take you home. Somebody, somebody. Ooh, build me up. Let your heart go astray. Ooh, come on up if you're here to stay. Please tell them, please tell them, please tell them, please. Please tell them that you're my girl. Just tell them that you're my girl. And you've got somebody to take you home. Somebody to take you home. And you've got somebody tonight to take you home. That's a wrap.
Thank you for joining me on Songwriters Perspective, and a special thank you to our guest, Mr. Bob Bender, and singer-songwriter Marc-Alan Barnette. And I'm your host, John Michael Ferrari, and remember, there's never a stranger in the audience.
Let's come together, let's come together, let's come together.